I am Kate Van Steenhuyse, and this is Artists in Their Space. I grew up in a small town in Iowa, rural Iowa, and then kind of bounced around all over the country before we moved to Kansas almost 10 years ago, which is crazy. I think in a lot of ways I always have been an artist, but when I was a kid, I didn't really, that label has always been a little uncomfortable, and it's not really something that people encourage very often, you know? It's like, oh, that's nice, or like, that's a nice hobby. You know, there's sort of the, they don't mean to be discouraging, but no one's just like, oh, sweet, you wanna be an artist when you grow up, or oh, you are an artist now. At this point in what I'm making, I try to not have a style, but I totally do. I get that. It took a long time to kind of understand the work that I'm making now and the work that I feel like I'm making as a professional artist. So like I do things like fold and iron the canvases and then paint on them, or I use rollers, or I use drips or things so that there's not like a brush stroke. But I try not to have any references to gravity or definitely no pictorial references at all. I don't sketch, I don't plan. I realized a while ago that if I want people to be caught in this kind of, I call it this state of not knowing. If I want a viewer to be caught in that state, I have to be in that state when I'm making it. So there's no way to plan this. It's all about reaction. To me, again, it's more interesting because it's more like life. Like you know, I did this one and it was actually meant to be this side, but then once I put all the different washes on there, I was like, ugh. That side's boring, but the back side, so much better. It's in the moment, but it takes me months to make a painting because, so like I just made these white lines earlier today, and it'll probably take me minimum of a few days, maybe a couple weeks to figure out what should happen next. And then I have to like do whatever the thing is and then kind of see what happens and like, oh, all right. So I'm always reacting off of what came before, and I usually start with some sort of material manipulation, folding and dyeing or something like that to try to see like, well, what would happen if I do this? And then what am I gonna do with that? I think of them like, they're like teenagers. If all the paintings can kind of feel like teenagers where they're not quite there, there's some awkwardness and there's some moments of beauty and but yeah, I don't want them to feel fully resolved. I want them to feel like they're frozen in this moment, maybe right before everything would click into place. So they're like right there, because I feel like that's when they still kind of have a life to them that's a lot more interesting. These are all about being purposely caught in this place where you're not sure what's going on and learning to just embrace that and roll with it. We all need more practice at being comfortable with not quite understanding what something is and being willing to put in an effort to invest and maybe try to figure it out and trusting your gut. We all need more talking about art because you can dive into ideas, but it's a total safe zone. Like this is not heart surgery, right? So like we can screw around with it and we can play with it and we can talk about it. And if things go wrong, it's like, oh, well, I made a crappy painting. Like who cares? It's fine. I think the overall message and theme is just this idea of being present and opening yourself up to not understanding what it is that you're looking at and just letting that, you know, letting that be okay. And hopefully too, getting some kind of, I mean, the reason I love painting and that I always come back to painting is for me, when I see a really great painting, it hits you in the gut, you know, in a way that other things just don't. And so I think too, hopefully people can have that very sensual experience where it's like, oh, that's great, or like, oh, look at that weird pink next to the, I mean, there's something very sort of simple and tactile about it. So I hope people can just be in the moment with it.